Hello and welcome to this CMBD video tutorial on Unit 3011 in the Coaching and Mentoring Practice syllabus. If you've not watched one of our tutorials before, my name is Brent Warren, and I'm the Training Director and one of the Senior Tutors at CMBD. As well as watching this video, you might also find the separate ones on referencing and getting the best out of the ManagementDirect resource useful as well. The Level 3 in Coaching and Mentoring has a number of different units, but if you're doing the award, which requires a single assignment, then you're quite likely to be doing 3011. Now, before we get into the specific tasks in this assignment, you need to gather together 3 bits of paper, and I do literally mean 3 bits of paper. There's a lot of supporting information to help you write the answers to the assignment questions, and I find it's incredibly useful to have actually printed these off and have them by your elbow as you're writing. Now, the first thing we need is the syllabus. Now, this can be downloaded from the CMBD website resource page for your qualification, or you may have it already. Now, what I suggest you do with the syllabus is read the sort of general information in the front. There's about 14 pages of it. Some of it's very useful and some of it isn't. For example, on page 9, there's quite a bit of information about what you can and can't do with appendices and what the total word count allowance is for the overall assignment, etc. Now, the bit I do suggest that you print are pages 14 to 18 inclusive. These are the specific guidance and what they call good practice for Unit 3011. And this is actually an essential piece of paper to have by your elbow, as I mentioned earlier. Now, those 2 screenshots show the first couple of pages of the syllabus guidance notes covering Task 1, which has 4 what we call ACs, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 and 1.4. The second thing we need is the assignment brief. This is a template on which you can actually record your answers under the various headings. Using the template is very helpful for assessors and for CMI moderators if they second check your work, because it's clear what you're writing about in that part. There's also further guidance on how to distribute your word count. I said earlier that you have 2,000 to 2,500 words for this assignment. You can go sort of 10% over, that's not an issue. But if I actually have a look at the assignment brief here, which I have by my side, for Task 1 we're told that the guideline word count is 7 to 750 words. And we're also told that for Task 2 guideline word count is 4 to 450 words. So that's a very, very useful piece of information. Your tutor will provide you with a copy of the assignment brief template. Now, the final thing we need is what we call the command-verb definitions. Now, when you look at the assignment brief, you'll see that each of the 4 questions has a command verb. 1.1 and 1.2 say define, and 1.3 and 1.4 say describe. We've also got various other command verbs throughout the paper. On page 2 we've got an identify, for example. Now, all 3 of the command verbs I've just mentioned are actually on page 2 of the command verb definitions. And it's very important just to read that definition before you start answering the question. For example, if I look at describe, provide an extended range of detailed factual information about a topic or item in a logical way, as opposed to identify, ascertain the origin, nature or definitive characteristics of something. And this will change how you structure your answer to a particular question. It's not too complicated in a level 3 assignment, but it is required reading. So, making the assumption we've done all that preparation, let's get into Task 1 and what we need to do and understand in order to be able to answer the questions. Now, a couple of housekeeping things that we need you to do. You will have received the assignment template from your tutor, So can you please rename the file to include your name? You'd be amazed how many times I've got half a dozen documents in my inbox to provide feedback on, and I actually haven't got a clue as to where they've come from. Now, that's more because I'm disorganised rather than you. I have a tendency to put things in a folder for providing feedback on, and when I look at the folder, I've got no idea who anything is from. Now, the other thing we'd ask you to do is to put your name and details of your qualification at the top of the paper in the header. What this does is identifies your work on each page. The final kind of housekeeping task is to insert a small short paragraph about you, what you do, very brief details about your company and why you're doing a CMI assignment. This is really useful for CMI moderators and people like that that don't know you. You will of course build up a relationship with your CMBD tutor, but somebody looking at, for example, to second mark your work, it gives some great context and background and kind of explains where you're coming from. That was a screenshot from a different unit. I've just put it up to show you an example. The paragraph is not included in your word count, and you'll note that underneath in brackets I've put provided for context, not included in word count, close brackets, to make that clear. You'll also note that in the header I've put the type of detail that you need to identify your work and your qualification. Lastly, and by no means least, when you send us work for feedback, say for example you've had a go at task 1 and you want to make sure you've got the assignment technique right, just include V1 or V2 in the file name so that we can make sure that we're looking at the latest version. Now, before you tackle any task or question in a CMI assignment, you need to have done your homework. You also need to have taken on board any specific instructions that might be in the assignment brief or in the good practice guide. And I'll start by looking at the assignment brief because at the beginning of it, it tells you that you can write the assignment from 3 different perspectives depending on which suits you the most. For example, you can use your own employment context or another organisation that you've worked for previously, or you can use a kind of scenario which they give you. In this one, you're a first line manager leading a team of 6 staff. Your organisation is keen to embed coaching and mentoring policies, etc., etc. By far the easiest approach is to write about you and your job and your organisation if you can. Your assignment should be written in the first person. In other words, lots of use of the I and my team and we language, not written as you would write a university degree in the third person. Writing about yourself, your own experiences and your own organisation or business is a very good way of making your points and your observations, which you can then support with appropriate references. So back to task 1, we need to write 700 to 750 words and we've got 4 questions. Define coaching and its purpose and define mentoring and its purpose. You could decide to answer those as separate questions, but it's also perfectly in order to take sort of 1.1 and 1.2 together, as long as you're clearly pointing out the differences between coaching and mentoring. The next thing we should do is check out the good practice guidance in the syllabus. Now, this can be slightly confusing in terms of alignment because you'll see on the first page you've got 1.1 and 1.2, and we've got what would appear to be a paragraph asking us to consider the differences between them. Now, it would be perfectly rational to assume that that paragraph is all there is that relates to 1.1 and 1.2, but actually if you turn over the page there would appear to be another sentence. Provide examples of when you think each intervention could be used, such as in development or managing performance. Full stop. And that actually is also to be included in the advice and guidance for 1.1 and 1.2. Where we go, the coaching continuum model by Witherspoon helps to outline the different roles. We've actually changed topic. So irritating as it is, it's just worth working out and perhaps marking which paragraphs and which bits of advice relate to which AC. Now, I mentioned earlier that taking 1.1 and 1.2 together in the same answer is, an option. And that's probably further reinforced by the fact that the guidance for 1.1 and 1.2 seems to cover both seamlessly. We can therefore make the same assumption that 1.3 and 1.4 could be taken together as well. Just make sure in your heading that you're making it clear that you're answering both of those ACs within the same response. Read the good practice notes carefully. There's a lot of very specific instructions in those as well, a surprising number. I mean, if I look at the first page for 1.1 and 1.2, it says you may also consider how you would use each of these interventions. So you need to get that into your answer. There's another one over the page. It says the coaching continuum model by Witherspoon helps to outline the different roles. So I think they're expecting you to use that as one of your references. And then we've got right at the bottom of that second page, you may wish to explain the role of a coach or mentor in a similar manner to a job description, which outlines the tasks you would expect each to fulfill. So there's some quite specific guidance in there in what you need to have in your answer and be writing about. So we've taken note of the kind of overall instructions and guidance, and we've started to look specifically at task 1. So let's now have a look at how we can use ManagementDirect to give us background and information and references and all the stuff we need to actually start writing. Okay, let's pop onto ManagementDirect and have a look at what we've got to help us do 3011. Now, when you guys log in, you'll only see one grey box. I've got the lot because I'm on a tutor account. But let's go in and view the qualification resources. Now, when you pop in there, you'll find all the units that are available. But if you're doing just the Award 1 unit, you'll be doing 3011. And if we click on this mapped resource by learning outcome, we can see here that we can access all the stuff for task 1 and for task 2. So let's go and have a look at task 1. And we can now see that we've got everything that could potentially be useful gathered together on one screen. So we've got videos, we've got models. If we have a look at the models, for example, you can see here a number of different coaching models. It takes a little time for them to download. Not all of these will be required. You will pick out what you need. You've got some videos from various people. Some of them are very good, some of them are not quite perhaps so useful. And we've got the checklists here, and I like the checklists. There's a number that I've identified for you. 083 Mentoring in Practice is a good one. It goes into the differences between coaching and mentoring and where they overlap. 089 Coaching for Improved Performance is good. 222 Giving Feedback. 224 Devising a Coaching Program, etc. Now, that's not an exclusive list. Have a look and see what you think is useful as well. I also like the Pearls of Wisdom. These are little sort of animated explanations. They're like a PowerPoint presentation on steroids. And this one here, the mentoring definition and the role of the mentor, that's another good one that goes into the differences between coaching and mentoring. Now, ManagementDirect can be a little bit quirky when you're trying to find something sometimes. I mentioned earlier that the Witherspoon model is probably a good one to use as a reference, and when you go to the models in ManagementDirect, it's not there. But if you put Witherspoon in the search box at the top right hand corner, and hit enter, then it comes up in one of the little Pearls of Wisdom videos. It's actually the one called The Role of the Coach. So it's usually there, it's just a question sometimes of trying to find it. A couple of things I want to say about referencing. There's no specific guidance on how many you should use for each question or pair of questions. What is more important is that it's appropriate and it's backing up what you're saying in your answer. A good word count saving tip is if there's a model, for example, that you want to refer to and there's a decent diagram of it in ManagementDirect or elsewhere, then if you cut and paste that into your assignment, it livens it up a bit, but it also, importantly, doesn't sharpen your word count. So in my opinion, for example, in 1.1 and 1.2, maybe 2, possibly 3 references, you don't want 10. So my hope is that by now you feel confident to actually start having a go at the 4 criteria in task 1. A reminder for 1.1 and 1.2 is that you are defining the meaning and purposes of both coaching and mentoring, and ensuring that the distinctions between the 2 different approaches in respect of aims and objectives are clearly identified, and that in 1.3 and 1.4 you're describing the key roles of a coach and a mentor, and illustrate your answer with the effect these different roles may have in your area of responsibility. So yet again, reinforcement that they're looking for examples from your workplace, observations and comments and opinions from you. Well, that kind of wraps up task 1. I hope you found it useful and helpful. I'll tackle tasks 2 to 5 in a second tutorial. Thank you for listening.